Hello and welcome to Inside Edition, where we discuss national, regional and international issues in depth. Since its establishment in 2001 by the Islamic Development Bank and a number of leading Islamic financial institutions, the General Council for Islamic Banks and Financial Institutions, dubbed CIBAFI, has been a leading international non-profit organization in the global architecture of Islamic finance. With over 130 members from more than 34 jurisdictions all around the world, CIBAFI aims at deepening Sharia objectives in financial dealings and transactions, as well as facilitating cooperation between members and institutions of common interest. To talk more about that, we are pleased to be joined here in the studio by the CIBAFI Secretary General, Dr. Abdelilah Bilatiq, right after this.
The financial sector has undergone significant change as a result of various developments with direct and indirect consequences. Some of these changes present opportunities for further growth, while others pose challenges and risks to the financial sector's stability. Considering the forces driving the change in the financial industry is a critical factor in ensuring the growth of the Islamic financial services industry. We took a proactive approach at the General Council for Islamic Banks and Financial Institutions to assess the industry's developments and identify ways of promoting the best practices, guiding the industry to overcome challenges, and continuing its growth. Over the last 6 years, CIBAFI has successfully implemented 2 strategic plans to support the industry's growth in light of global developments. To remain relevant, CIBAFI reassessed its strategic plans to identify the appropriate initiatives based on current developments such as regulatory reforms, emerging trends such as sustainability and climate change, the acceleration of digitalization, and others. An inclusive process was used to create the new strategic plan for the period 2022 to 2025. With support from the Board of Directors, CIBAFI members and stakeholders were engaged through meetings and surveys to capture their feedback and suggestions. CIBAFI developed its new strategy that focuses on achieving 4 strategic goals: strengthening the global market position of Islamic finance through promoting its principles and its added value for the economy and the society; developing meaningful and impactful collaborations between IFIs and other international institutions to support the growth of IFSI; leveraging on growth drivers such as sustainability and technology to boost the IFSI development; equipping all stakeholders with the knowledge, skills, and competencies to actively participate in the development of the IFSI. A number of initiatives will be developed to achieve these strategic goals. These initiatives are guided by 4 strategic objectives: advocacy of Islamic finance values and related policies and regulations, sustainability and innovation integration, industry research and analysis, professional development. CIBAFI will rely on 3A concept to facilitate the successful implementation, evaluation, and communication of deliverables of the new strategic plan: aiming, defining clear targets and smart objectives; assessing, conducting a continuous assessment of the initiatives and projects; applying, implementing the defined initiatives and communicating the results to show commitment. CIBAFI is pleased to announce the official launch of its new strategic plan 2022 to 2025, and we look forward to your generous support as we continue to serve the industry and sustain its growth.
Welcome back. Joining me here in the studio is CIBAFI Secretary General, Dr. Abdelilah Bilatiq. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for getting me here.
Sir, first off, CIBAFI is an establishment that has been in Bahrain for around 21 years. Your anniversary was actually recent. So what can you tell us about CIBAFI's, basically the establishment of CIBAFI, as well as its vision, its mission, and what it did until now?
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity and for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. First of all, yes, CIBAFI, which is the General Council for Islamic Banks and Financial Institutions, it has been established in the year 2001 It's an international organization. We are affiliated to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Right.
The organization was established by the Islamic Development Bank and leading Islamic banks at the time, with the purpose of in some way representing the global umbrella for Islamic financial institutions.
Right.
With then the mandate derives from that is to represent the banks, the Islamic banks and other Islamic financial institutions globally with international organizations, standard setting bodies, and global organizations which have similar mission and objectives as CIBAFI. In that angle, we have, our work or mandate derives through some strategic objectives, looking at the advocacy and the representation of Islamic finance and globally, and to do that we do some like research, publications, and other trainings, workshops, and other programs. We started 21 years, as you said, ago in Bahrain, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the leadership of Bahrain, the central bank, and the higher leadership for this opportunity for the establishment of CIBAFI in Bahrain. We have now over 130 Islamic financial institutions from 34 countries globally.
Exactly.
We will have the opportunity, we have a lot of things that we do that are within our mandate, but if we can say, in recent years we have a very high focus on global development, looking at sustainability, sustainable development, digital transformations, climate change, and many other points that we target, and we aim at, first of all, getting this knowledge spread to the members first, and then representing the members globally with other international bodies and regulatory bodies in Bahrain and beyond.
Absolutely. On your what you just said, the OIC, as you have mentioned, is a big part of CIBAFI's basically establishment and its structure as well. And having that authority actually puts the standard higher and showcases the standard of CIBAFI. Now, what can you tell us about the core values and the strategic goals and services that were actually provided by CIBAFI?
Yeah, as we said, we are affiliated to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So we have, but our membership goes actually beyond the members of the OIC. So our work is derived from looking at the global developments today or from before that will have an impact or are having an impact on Islamic banks now or will be having this in the future. So our core objectives or goals is really to have, which have actually through various discussions and consultations with the members and with the board of directors, we just had a renewed strategic plan for 2022-2025, which focus on various areas. The first of it is to promote the value proposition of Islamic finance by having an integration of sustainability with innovation within the operations of Islamic banks. And to do this, some various objectives are derived from there is on women and young empowerment and the professional development of the staff of Islamic banks. So to do that, we have a number of like workshops, training programs, and so on, which are stay current and go beyond the traditional markets, as we know. For instance, the GCC or MENA or other countries. So in this we target, and we know as Islamic finance has been spreading globally. In many parts of the world, and thanks to God for this. Of course, it's a blessing to have this. our reach also increases. It gives us also more responsibility and accountability.
Yes.
We have to go beyond our traditional markets, and for that we have started many initiatives, including, for example, on the training and empowerment or professional development, reaching to not only to the region or the Arabic-speaking countries, but going beyond. And this we started 5 years ago, or even more, to English-speaking countries, French-speaking regions, and we are now starting again to go beyond that to Russian-speaking regions, and beyond to Turkish-speaking places. So this is becoming a key mandate of our organization, is to trigger the discussion over what's happening globally and what will have the impact in the future for the Islamic banks, and bring it to the table, to the agenda. You know, for example, even on these various topics that we talk about on the global agenda, many of the Islamic banks, in some countries, they are more advanced perhaps than others. And one thing which we have in the Islamic banks in general, Islamic financial institutions in general, is that in many countries they have a smaller scale.
Yes.
So really big banks, there are a limited number of them.
Course.
So that's why it's very important for us to bring all these different profiles of banks, of Islamic banks, together to share best practices.
Yeah.
So those that we know that they have some very good practices in their operations, so that we put in environment or the atmosphere that is conducive for exchanging information and best practices. And yes, it is happening. So one of the points that we recently we do is really looking at sustainability, sustainable development, to make it as part of the operations of the Islamic banks. Islamic banks, when we look at their core mandates or their DNA, if we can say, it's something similar, or perhaps even go beyond the requirement of sustainable development.
Yeah.
So we took this opportunity, of course, to through some of the research that we did, and to find that there is a clear convergence and synergies between sustainable development requirements and
Islam.
the objectives of Sharia that drive the work of Islamic banks.
Yeah.
And so we found there is a strong correlation between the two. So that's why we started. We have, to go with what's happening globally. We have established 2 working groups that help us from the membership, that help us to have this exchange of dialogue. Have one on sustainability working group, and the second is on innovation and technologies, that debates on what's going on and how it will impact the banks, or is impacting already now, and what we can do about it.
Yes. Actually, now that you've mentioned it, when I was going through the report, last year's report, not the Sustainable Guide one, but the report from last year, one of the conclusions actually said that there are certain changes that have to be made to be accommodating the new norms of the banking environment of the cities, and part of that is the technological adaptation as well. Also, when you talked about human manpower and training more human manpower, it's very important to mention that CIBAFI has been providing these trainings and these workshops for many, many years. But now there are more workshops because of the progress of Islamic banking, not just in Bahrain, but in the region. And as you've rightfully said, Islamic banking has always been there, but the strength of it have always been in the region here, because basically the banking systems were built upon, a lot of the banking systems were built upon Sharia banking. In other countries, like you've mentioned, they were more of a service from banks rather than an actual bank that does the full Islamic banking. How important is it to exchange these expertise and spread the awareness about the diligence of Islamic banking specifically?
Yeah, I think this is very important and this is critical, and thank you for this question, because traditionally, I mean, if we look at it historically, Islamic banking started in the region, mostly in the 73, 75, through various initiatives, I mean, in Bahrain, in the UAE, in Kuwait, and others. And then from there, gradually, it's spread out to global. When even, I mean, on the year 2001, when CIBAFI was established here, the spread was very limited still. So I think it was really an opportunity and a chance for a country like Bahrain to host us in this at that early stage, while at that time Islamic banking was perhaps not so developed as it is right now. So going beyond that, I mean, for the last and I think there was a really kind of a jump in the crisis, the global crisis, financial crisis, 2007, 2009.
Several jumps.
Yes. So when that happened, so there was like a global awareness of Islamic finance, that it is something that is more solid, more reliable on ethical transactions, on the real economy. So that's really came up with a push, and then from there we started having a spread globally of Islamic banks. Now we are more than 100 countries actually have Islamic finance, either banks or some other institutions. So when we look at the geographical distribution, of course, there is the core here in the GCC. There is other regions, for example, Southeast Asia. We have Malaysia. There is in Turkey. They have some strong interest of it. But some other places, they are still limited. Maybe the numbers are there of the institutions, but perhaps the scale and the size and sophistication,
even awareness,
is awareness, of course, it is less. So that's why, I mean, we start working with our members to get this the word out and to see how we can exchange cooperation. So to the last maybe 5-10 years, there were a lot of exchanges of information, a lot of delegations coming, for example, here to Bahrain to see the institutions, the infrastructure institutions that are here, like CIBAFI, IOFI, the IFM, that work on this, and visit the central bank of Bahrain, see the level of regulation and sophistication of supervision for the Islamic finance. So there was a tremendous number, really. I mean, I cannot mention how many, but for example, many from Africa, from Central Asia, all the countries in Central Asia like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and many others from Africa. North Africa also started strongly, from Morocco. Tunisia, of course, had it before, and other sub-Saharan Africa, which has also a lot of potential. And going beyond this to non-traditional markets, of course, like the European countries, whenever there is an opportunity. So that's why we think that there is a way of a leverage for the benefits of both. So, for example, we think that, of course, in the region, the growth of the industry has been tremendous over the years, with double-digit growths. Even during the crisis, still the growth is there. But there are pockets of growth that are stronger, perhaps, and for the future will be very beneficial. This is probably in countries like African countries, which have young population, growth, economic growth potential very high. You have Central Asia, also very, very good. And there is the other side also of Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, the biggest Muslim countries, but with Islamic finance still not very well developed. So these are like pockets of development that probably will bring growth to those regions, but also benefits to the current Islamic banking, how it is in this region.
Amazing. Actually, because of that, because of these pockets, as you said, these strengthen the position of CIBAFI and in the future, of course, Islamic banking in general. And usually the people that spread the awareness or spread the word are the clients of the Islamic banks, but they are being told or being given this information by the staff. And the staff is where you guys put a lot of care into giving the proper accredited training in order for them to be able to spread the awareness in that from that point of view. But also, you guys do a lot of efforts to achieve the SDGs, not only from an educational point of view, because that is one of the major SDGs, but also in basically balancing the scales when it comes to gender, employment, and stuff like that. What can you tell us about how you attain to achieve all of these SDG points?
Well, thank you very much for this question. This is, when we talk about sustainable development and sustainable development goals, sustainability in general, it's a subject which is very close to my heart personally. So we have been really working on this very hard for even, I mean, for 6-7 years already.
Yeah.
But our work has been gradual. When we started, I mean, at the beginning, so we start from this angle, looking at the DNA of Islamic banks and the ethical way of banking, which we feel as an organization that perhaps is not enough shown to the public, to the outsiders. I mean, we know it inside what we do. We know the ethics and so on, elements of it. But perhaps the outsiders don't have this knowledge. Yeah. So we started doing, going with the global developments, for instance, on sustainability, doing a number of research. And then we found out that in reality, so there is this close, as we said, close relationship and correlation, strong ties between the two. But on the other hand, perhaps there is a lack of awareness from the outside and from the inside of Islamic banks. There is perhaps sometimes there was a sort of misunderstanding or not showcasing what we are doing. Yeah. So to address this is why I mean 2-3 years ago we started with the establishment of this sustainability working group, which have members from over 20 countries and representing even international organizations working with the United Nations on it and with other places from all over the globe actually working in this. And the purpose was to have started brainstorming at the beginning, and we said what can be done? I mean, how can we showcase this value proposition of Islamic finance, which goes beyond even the sustainable development goals, but will promote the sustainable development goals in the same time. So we had some event with the United Nations United Development Program we had here in Bahrain just before the pandemic actually started. So we had plans to continue this outreach. It did not happen, but we continue our work, and this is where we came up. We started working on a sustainability guide. Sustainability guide for Islamic banks, Islamic financial institutions. So to show, and this actually was just released last week.
It's on the website of the, I saw it, perfect.
Just very recent. So in here, we want to show to the Islamic banks how perhaps they can go in a systematic way to promote the SDGs within their operations, sustainability within their operations.
Because the services are already there. They've been there from the beginning. But
exactly.
Nobody really talked about them and put them together that way.
Exactly. So just really puts the framework for it. And so we started with having some discussions on the framework and the foundations of sustainability within Islamic finance in general, if we can so. And we say, okay, you have to do certain matters, but of course you have to disclose what you do. You have to be transparent of your operations, what you are doing, to showcase this value. So because we think really that beyond the Sharia compliance element of the Islamic banks, Islamic banking should be appealing to universally. Anyone can be a client of Islamic bank.
It's a safe bet.
Yes, because of its ethics, because of the close relationship with the economy, and this is what we want then to promote. So we have a number of initiatives going with this for the coming weeks and months. So this was established. We have already announced that we have an award, for instance, that we do. So the subjects for the 2023 award will be sustainability. Beautiful. So the banks that will have
Get ready.
Yes, exactly. Get ready for it, and then you have now the opportunity, because then you know what is the roadmap. So we are establishing also a community of champions that will champion this and showcase what they are doing for each element. Of course, sustainable development goals cannot be or do not have the same level of, if we can say, attention in every part of the world.
Yeah.
Some parts more perhaps delay in certain areas, so they have to have more focus on those. And this, through our research, we found out that actually this is the case. For example, in some countries, education is lagging behind, so more efforts need to be done in there. Some other places, women empowerment or the youth empowerment is perhaps lagging behind and need to go and to have some more effort in that. So what we are recommending is, of course, sustainability cannot be just implemented like this bluntly, but so there will need to be an analysis looking at the country strategies on sustainability. What is the country focus? What is the bank focus? How to have this into the mission and vision of the Islamic banks? And then from there, start with the top, with the board of directors, have the buy-in, and then go down to the levels of the operations and to do it. So it's highlighted to us also, as we said, some things that we need to work more on is, for instance, on women empowerment. So this is not only a question for the Islamic banks or the region. It's a global attention that we need to do, and driven by the UN and by many others. Even on the financial sector, there is an interest on looking of how to have gender equity on terms of giving opportunities, both in the workforce as well as on the financial inclusion front. So to do this, again, we'll be just issuing a publication, a research that we are doing on this, on women empowerment, and this will be, inshallah, ready in the next 3-4 weeks before the end of June. We will be having some awareness initiatives on it to understand what perhaps, again, some of the banks, as we said, are advanced in certain areas. So really our aim is to set a benchmark. So look at, this is the benchmark, and then the banks by themselves, they have to go through and see where they are situated, and then what others are doing, and how they can improve their stance from the Sustainable Development Goals in general, and sustainability in the Islamic banking in particular.
The amazing part about this is, as we've mentioned, that actually the services, the sustainability of services have always been available within Sharia banking. But what makes it important to follow it now are the many challenges that have been faced all around the world. We're talking about the pandemic, we're talking about economic challenges that a lot of countries are facing, lack of resources, natural resources in some countries. So all of these are actually why there is this big movement towards it, but it's always been there. In 2001, one of the things that your report also mentioned was the changing of how banking or monetary banking is looked at, and moving it to value assets and so on. And that is part of the Sharia banking concept that CIBAFI actually supports. They show you the way to do. What can you tell us about these recommendations and their application? How will they change the way Islamic banking is viewed in the future, and maybe have more goals for future clientele for you, which would be the Islamic banks themselves?
Yeah, well, I think this is very, very important, because again, if we are looking at if you can say universal banking, and this is how actually we really look at it. And so Islamic banking, if you talk to anybody, and I have many friends from Europe or from the US, and I when they are curious sometimes about Islamic finance, I explain to them what are the values, what are the underlying requirements, what is the value proposition of this. So regardless of you Islamic or not, you call it that way or no. So it is appealing to them. So many of them, they say, yes, why not? This should be very, very important. On the other hand, and this we see it not only on the Islamic banking. For example, you have also the sukuk. And so we have this movement, and the recent developments, they bring the question, in many fronts, on climate change risks and the implications for the financial sector and the transition that is needed for that. And you have, the values, looking at the values. When we look at, for example, the financial sector, the global GDP represents maybe around 8 or 10% of the global financial assets.
Okay.
But is this really?
Is this what we can do? Can't we do more? Exactly.
So it shouldn't be the other way. It should be. I mean, the financial sector should be at the service of the real economy, not the other way.
True.
So, and that's why we think that bringing values again at the center of the financial sector is very good and very important. So the way to go with it is to show this value proposition and to show, I mean, again, sustainability is one way of doing it.
Yeah.
So there are other ways, as you said, like this sustainability sukuk or green sukuk or others on the asset management or the funds, the Islamic funds. It's also a very good and important way of promoting sustainability. And we know that there are, I mean, this sector, for example, of the Islamic funds has seen tremendous growth for the last 5 years. It has probably had tripled or 300% for the last 5 years, reaching $200 billion, $200 billion recently. So there is, and even we are sure it's beyond that, goes beyond that, because these are those funds that are declared per se to be or public, that are declared like that. But we have many, many others. So I think there is a value proposition, but again now it's really from, I mean, our role as the organization representing the Islamic banks is to showcase this, and on the other hand, to get our members to get into this movement and focus more on these areas, on the value propositions and how to show it, and to go beyond the traditional markets, not just stay inside where we are working, but to go really beyond to, I mean, developed countries and those that will be that emerging markets also, which represent really again tremendous growth potential for the future.
Right, especially that this is basically the sustainable way of building the monetary infrastructure of countries like that. Well, in order for CIBAFI to do all of these duties and do these research and be able to tackle all of the things that their members expect them to, CIBAFI deals and cooperates with many regional and global institutions. What can you tell us about these kind of collaborations, and how do they contribute positively to the aspired goals that you have set for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, our collaborations on different fronts. For example, on the advocacy front, it is very important that and actually they are very happy with it. So we have working relationship, for example, with international organizations like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, with the Financial Stability Board, with the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, and others. This is from the conventional side, and even the UN, actually, the United Nations. As I said, we had some programs with them, and we are currently exploring, resuming the work that we had in presence on some of the awareness initiatives that will go beyond traditional markets again. We will really on a global scale to Africa, Kenya, or other really places in Southeast Asia, Central Asia, North Africa, and beyond. With these all international bodies, our role with them is to explain exactly what is Islamic finance and how we can contribute globally to this, to sustainable development and to financial stability. This is very, very important. With others from the Islamic finance sphere, like the IOFI, Accounting Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, and the IFSP, Islamic Financial Services Board in Malaysia, we have, of course, very close working relationship to address common issues that we see for the membership. So going beyond this on the areas related to professional development, we have established agents in more than 20 countries that deliver our programs. The good thing also that we can say is with the pandemic, what it's brought from positive side, we try also not only to see the negative sides, but we tried, I mean, when it just happened at the beginning, we were like disturbed of having, the meetings in presence and so on, have to change everything. So for maybe a few months, there was like a kind of uncertainty. But beyond that, after 3-4 months, we started doing our programs online, changing them online, which allowed us actually to get outreach to places that we were not able to go through.
And sustainable.
Exactly. So this was really very, good opportunity, which gave us the idea. So we are working now, on this to really have a global reach for the professional development programs that we have, on having a platform, dedicated platform, where we will be delivering all our, online platform, we'll be delivering all the training materials in Arabic, French, English, and Russian and Turkish.
Right.
So really to be true global, in addition to our existing agents that we have and workshops and webinars and so on. So I think we took a positive approach in terms of looking at for what's the disturbance that the pandemic brought, in leveraging from it and perhaps transform it into some opportunities. And we are lucky we have our members that support us and our board of directors that support us for this journey.
Amazing. When CIBAFI does these kind of efforts or these kind of cooperation or executes these kind of services, regionally and nationally, in Bahrain specifically and also in the region around us, what are the main collaborators that are main collaborators like the CBB you've mentioned before that are important for your work?
Yeah, of course, CBB is a key pillar and key support for CIBAFI. But all the other Islamic banks that are here, or Islamic financial institutions, they are our members and they support us. We do work also with, we have a working relationship with the EDB, Economic Development Board, of course, and many others. Actually, all the institutions that are here in Bahrain, even universities. For example, this is part of our duty also, where we think we offer, for example, all internship opportunities and collaborations in some of the research. So we think it's a duty for us to, the local, we have some activity on the local basis. And we do have, of course, many programs that we do them in presence. We used to have, for example, some that will be coming with the international prestigious universities like Ivy Business School from Canada. So we have an annual program. Last 2 years it was online, but before that it was always happening in Bahrain, and inshallah this year again will be happening in Bahrain. So we have our, and there are also, as we said, some other organizations that work in Bahrain that are international organizations. For example, even the MENA FATF, Financial Action Task Force, based in here, where we have some work in collaborations, and the other Islamic financial infrastructure institutions that are based in here.
Amazing. Now, when we talk about the COVID-19 and how it affected us, one of the things that you've mentioned that is a must or a positive side that this CIBAFI has actually gone through is technological innovation. I think technological innovation was speeded up because of the pandemic. So how did COVID-19 bring changes and challenges for the Islamic financial institutions, and how did you use it to your own goals and to make it more positive?
Yeah, I think starting maybe, I think 2017 or 16, 17, because we do have our Global Islamic Bankers Survey where we, on an annual basis that we do, where we survey the banks on new emerging issues that we say, to give them a benchmark of where they are situated. Right. What we have seen at the beginning, when we started with this on the financial technologies or the fintech, for instance, is that perhaps there was not a keen interest on these points. At the beginning, when we used to talk about the digital currencies, the blockchain and so on, it was a mere something we hear about, but we don't really consider seriously. But so the more we go, the more the awareness, and we bring them this discussion on the table at our events and our board of directors meetings and our AGM and so on. So the more we go, the more we started to see awareness rising within the Islamic financial institutions on the need for digitalization and digital transformation. So when the pandemic happened, what we saw, I think some positive signs is that projects that were planned for maybe 3-5 years beyond the road, they were brought very early to be implemented, and they were indeed implemented. On the other hand, what we have seen, and perhaps this is where we need a little bit more of work, is that, and we thought that it is very important to establish an innovation and technology working group. Because our research, while it shows now that there is interest, or the banks, they started implementing more these technologies, new technologies, we find that perhaps there is a lack of more advanced technologies.
Okay.
And this is why we try, again, I mean, for example, taking this opportunity now to talk about it, to say, like, digital transformation is not only mobile payments.
Yes.
So there are much more, it's not only mobile banking.
Yeah, it goes deeper than that. I mean, let alone the fact of cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. There is a whole sea of things you can go into.
Exactly. So what we found out is that mainly they started with this, like mobile payments, mobile banking, and so on. But then seeing maybe this is it. No, we say no. And hold on. So there are a lot of other things. You have the opportunities and possible things that can be brought by, for example, the blockchain. You have the automation processes. You have the big data. You have the artificial intelligence, how it is used, for example, in the operations for detecting fraud, for anti-money laundering, for client-facing tools. So there is much, much more. And this, I think we still need to do a little bit more.
Yes.
So some of the banks, of course, they are doing, or they are starting to do this, and others, we are promoting this a little bit further. And this is the purpose was for the establishment of the Innovation and Technology Working Group, where we, I think we had our second or third meeting just recently, and then we bring the banks and we ask them, what is the key technology you are implementing, and then we ask them to showcase to the others again, to see and to have this exchange of views. And we will be having some work on, for example, the blockchain use cases in the financial sector. We are working on some areas, for example, which is very, very important. I mean, it will be for in the next probably 3 to 5 years, will have an impact is on central bank digital currencies, which is something new now. I mean, it's still not implemented, but many countries, over 80% of central banks, they are either doing some pilot projects or doing very advanced research on this. And this will have really some significant impact, or may have significant impact on the financial intermediation in general. So the banks, we have to talk about it, to engage with regulators, to see how this will have or may have an impact from now, and then prevent negative impacts from happening, because of course the role of the financial sector is very important for the real economy. So it has to continue having this intermediation between the depositors and of course the projects.
Of course, one of the roles that you do at CIBAFI is sort of putting out the risks of going into these different fields or different technological fields. Well, to continue on that, the CIBAFI seeks to promote exceptional practices and innovation specifically in the industry through supporting Islamic finance market-related research, as you have mentioned before. How do you target the research that you will do? Is it a survey, as you've mentioned, from the other banks? Is it something that you futuristically see because of your research? You put your recommendations that are, as you said, from 2022 until 2025. How do you go into supporting the Islamic financial market through these researchers?
Actually, our work with international bodies is very important. Because, for example, when we have regular meetings with leaders of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision and others, we have interactions with Financial Stability Board and others. We work with the regulators. So what's emerging or will be happening in the next 3 to 5 years, we already have some kind of views on it. We see what will be happening.
Where it's trending.
Yeah, exactly. What are the trends? For example, in the year 2016, we had our first discussions, roundtables on the future of money.
Yeah.
And we invited the founder of the blockchain to discuss.
Amazing.
So this was really very early. So everyone were thinking why we are looking at this now.
Yeah.
Last year, for example, we had some discussions on the global taxes.
Yes.
And now we see that
the changes in the taxes and everything changing
are coming. So we have some very close interaction with the regulators and with international organizations, and then we see what are the emerging trends that will have an impact or already having or will have in the next 3 to 5 years. For example, I can share with you, and this is not really new, but for example, as I said, you have central bank digital currencies.
Yes.
This is we know will have, if not addressed properly, may have some significant impact. So we are really doing some research on it right now to see how this will be, how we can prevent this, and how we can talk to banks and the regulators and so on. We have, for example, issues of climate change risk. Most likely, for example, even we see it from the Financial Stability Board, we see from there is the network of central banks, central bank network for greening the financial sector. For example, what we saw, it was established early last year or just the end of the year before with the 30, 35 banks, central banks. Now it has reached over 100 central banks looking at this. Yeah. So when you see this, you foresee there is change that will happen on this front. So we can say that the Basel Committee, for instance, for sure, in the next 2 to 3 years will be issuing some things related to prudential guidelines for the climate change risks for the banks. Yes. So that's why we start from now. We say, okay, so there is something here. So we are anticipating this, and we have, for example, in the sustainability working group, one of our projects is looking at the carbon footprint of the Islamic banks' portfolios. Not only the operations, but really on the assets, so what they are doing. So it's a way to have, again, see what is our situation, how this will evolve, and how this will have an impact on our operations. Yeah. So it's, in short, the way we do or we approach our research or our advocacy interests is through the surveys that we do, where it's just on an annual basis, where we see what are the concerns of the Islamic banks, and then we start developing programs on them, and with our discussions with global bodies. And of course, very key is our board of directors, which have, from 15 countries, where we meet, of course, 3-4 times a year, and then we discuss all the potential, the important factors that we have to address and we have to include in our work plan.
One really important thing when we talk about this kind of innovation and the research that is put behind it is the acknowledgement of your member institutions, which are the Islamic banks, as well as your own staff, or basically the people that make it possible for these kind of services to be studied over and over again. And that's why CIBAFI actually established a number of awards. You talked a little bit about it, but I want to go more in depth for people to understand that this is really a very harmonious kind of balanced system where there is research, there is actual pushing for more sustainability, for more knowledge, for more execution of these services, because of safeguarding not just the individual's monetary or economy, but actual countries. The global economy has seen a lot of shocks. We've mentioned that also before, not just from the pandemic. There were the stock falls, there were a lot of things that came with the environmental aspects as well. So what can you tell us about CIBAFI establishing awards that are targeting several goals as well as different themes? How important are these awards? Why are they made? And have you seen that their impact has changed the way people do business or the people approach Islamic banking businesses?
Yeah. I think there is, as you say, there is like our approach has different angles. Yeah. So we have, as we said, things that we do with regulators, with international bodies. That's on the one hand. We have the awareness on the, for example, on the risks on some areas and the operational issues that can happen. But we also wanted to have rewards. So encouraging best practices from our side is looking at the various topics that we want. And when you actually look at the topics that we have there, then you can see what is our thinking on how is it going, how is it evolving. And that's why we established in 2017, we had the first award, which was on environment and social responsibility.
Yes.
So you can see from
Since
there,
then,
already, so it's like the precursors, something coming before the sustainability to be really embedded. And then we have actually very strong not fight, but like desire of the banks to have it. So we have clear criteria having how this should be given and what they should be having to get it. And then the other award that was following that was on investments and SMEs, SMEs operations, small and medium enterprises. So which was again, it's a bank in Bangladesh that got it, which they do tremendous work on SMEs. And the other one, the following one, was on adoption of financial technologies.
Which is innovations.
Exactly, the innovations going, which was just last year. So we have it every 2 years. So our next is on sustainability. So and this one showing the interest on the topic from the members and the board. All of them. I mean, last year when we were having this on innovation, on technology adoption, on fintech and technology adoption, all of them, they were saying, but maybe you should give us more time to prepare for the next one. Usually we used to announce it just maybe 6 months before, 7 months. So, and that's why we had a special committee last year already that discussed and we met and had a number of meetings and decided on the topics to be sustainability for next year. So you see the thinking of the organization, how it is done. I mean, on social environment, social responsibility, SME investments, technologies, and sustaability. So the trend will continue like this, and we see some positive changes. To be frank, we see positive changes. For example, when we started, it's a very important sector is the SME, financing of SME sector. It's very key and very important, and we started even earlier on this 2014, 15 on this. At the time when we started again through the research, we found out that many of the members perhaps not finding it as very high. So, but then when we having had a number of roundtables in different regions, in Bahrain, we have in Saudi, we had in Malaysia, in other places. So they started exchanging this information. And for example, some seeing that many or a number of the Islamic banks had dedicated departments for SMEs and others not. 2-3 years after, down the road, we saw that most of the Islamic banks have dedicated department, which was very positive change. So it allows perhaps it's good for both. It's a business opportunity for the banks, but also for the real economy and for the SME sectors. So we found that this award is something, of course, for us, does not require from the banks any contribution, and it's symbolic. We showcase what they are doing. It's an incentive, so which is very positive. And we will continue with it. So even though we actually, to be frank, we have requests for having more, on the topic, or more frequent. But we said for now we'll keep it every 2 years, and we may revisit this in the future.
Definitely, but these initiatives are important incentives, not because the banks won't do anything about it, but it will highlight them more. When you see one of these banks that have received these awards, you would want to look more into it, and then you'll understand it, and you'll see if there's something similar in your country, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for being with us today and for explaining a lot of the things that CIBAFI is dealing with for the past 21 years. And that was the end of our show, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Sarah, for the opportunity, and pleased to be here.
Thank you. And we'd like to thank you, dear viewers, for watching us, and we'll see you next week in another edition of Inside Edition.